and welcome again to TUTV, the television programme for trade union members. This month's mix of news, views and information comes from Bristol and the West Country. Our reporters will be ranging from the Cotswolds to Cornwall.
I'll be on the road hearing from people who've had to accept the change from permanent to casual employment. And we'll be looking at what the unions can do to help the thousands of others who face the same prospects.
And I shall be looking at the role of British unions in the works councils, which European and some British multinationals are starting to set up.
And that's our starting point. European works councils are definitely not to the taste of some employers. Opposition to them was one reason for the government opt-out under the Maastricht Treaty. But from September next year, large companies operating in more than one European country will have to set up works councils to consult employees about company strategy. Many have decided not to wait. They've already set up their works councils and included UK unions despite the opt-out. British multinationals are beginning to follow suit. And for a view now of the part that unions can play in European works councils, we're going a few miles down the river to Avonmouth.
The Paris-based chemicals firm Rhône-Poulenc held its first European dialogue, they don't call it a works council, 5 years ago, a year after acquiring the works at Avonmouth. The meeting didn't go well, almost entirely taken up by statements from management and foreign unions.
In fact, I think a lot of people were quite fed up at the end of the meeting and wondered what they'd actually got out of it.
I think a lot of things were overlooked. I don't believe there's much preparation either for the delegates or for the management observers. I don't believe people thought hard enough about the transport difficulties, bringing 6, 7, 8 different countries' delegates together, and the inevitable translation difficulties.
5 years on, things have improved. Rows over selecting the 36 European staff delegates have been solved, and the national delegations have worked out how to combine to extract information that's useful to staff in all countries.
Questions can be asked, answers can be given. Those answers can then be taken back to your individual countries. Look at best how those answers can be interpreted in your country. And certainly raise the issues with your own particular local management and see what replies they give to see if the replies given are consistent with the replies that are given by senior management in Paris.
United Biscuits has only become a truly European company in the last few years. One of the delegates to their first European Works Council, held last month in Edinburgh, was David Ironmonger. On the agenda, serious matters: jobs, investment and competitive pressures. But what did he get out of the meeting?
Well, it certainly made me look up into what, how big a company United Biscuit is. United Biscuits is worldwide and European, and it gave us a chance to learn about how the United Biscuits performance is doing. Whether it be good news or bad news, it gave us a good insight into it.
Next year, large European companies with workforces in more than one country will have to set up Euro Works Councils. So why did United Biscuits jump the gun? Simply to get a setup that favoured management?
By moving early, we were able, with our employee representatives, to discuss with a lot more freedom what was the best sort of forum that we could have, the shape of the forum that would be effective and appropriate for United Biscuits, rather than waiting until the legislation was completely in place and one felt as though you just had to take what had been handled down from Brussels.
The unions accepted that view. But is the Euro Works Council likely to be any practical use?
Yes, I think it is, because I mean, I enjoy talking to my European counterparts in Edinburgh, and we exchange views, and I also I think it can go a long way to helping with my possibly with my local pay negotiations as well.
But if Rhône-Poulenc is any guide, those who hope that Euro Works Council might bring British terms and conditions of employment up to continental standards are likely to be disappointed.
The decisions needed to resolve those particular situations won't be taken at the European level. They will be arrived at on a national basis.
There may be 6 million part-time workers in Britain today, but fewer than 1 in 5 has an occupational pension. Often the conditions of their own company pension scheme ruled them out. Well, thanks to a European court ruling late last year, part-timers must now have the freedom to join. Abbey National is one company which has changed its pension scheme to embrace part-timers. W.H. Smith and TSB, John Lewis and General Accident have done the same. But some employers still need a prompt. Unions can press companies to put their pension schemes on a fairer footing, and there's a checklist of action points in the information pack for this programme. One of the largest construction sites in Europe. And in this month's campaign slot, an education campaign which takes the world of work and the work of unions into schools.
At Pittville Secondary School in Cheltenham, they believe in preparing teenagers for the outside world. So before they start their 2-week work placement, they're being introduced to health and safety issues and the trade unions.
Workplaces are dangerous places, and they need to be aware of the risks of health and safety and the role that trade unions play.
All sides agree the more they learn now, the better prepared the teenagers will be for later. They're already familiar with things like the stress of coursework.
Do you feel stressed?
Yeah. When coursework's due in and it's not done, and I need to get it done and too much.
If they go out there to work, they're going to find that these situations might occur. And therefore, to do a little introduction to the trade unions at this time is probably a very good thing.
What do you do when you wake up in the morning and feel too ill to go to work? Ring the boss or haul yourself in because you're frightened of what might happen if you don't? According to the latest ACAS annual report, 1 in 4 employers is considering a cut in sick pay after the government transferred the burden of financing sick pay onto businesses. Over the last year, union reps report that more and more employers are setting sickness targets, visiting sick staff at home, disciplining or even sacking those they think are abusing the system. Here in the southwest, the South Devon NHS Trust has reduced sickness rates from 5.2 to 4.2%, but now it's linking part of its latest pay offer to a further 1% cut. Nicholas Woolley reports on the reaction of staff and their unions.
For the moment, the proposal to link pay to falling sickness rates is on hold here at Torbay Hospital until the final decision on local pay bargaining across the NHS. But staff are preparing to fight, with, they hope, patients' backing.
I think if the public know the fact that perhaps they're going to be nursed or fed or whatever by members of staff who have dragged themselves into work who could be carrying any sort of infectious disease, I think, and who are stressed because they're doing what they feel they have to do. I think if the public know that, then they will give us their support.
When I take the picture, I shall ask you to breathe in, and to breathe out, and to hold your breath out, okay?
Inside the hospital, there are widely varying sickness rates. Radiographers seem to stay healthy, so they'll qualify for any pay rise. But they were still outraged at the proposal to tie pay to rates of sickness.
They were very insulted. The implication that they are, as it were, swinging the lead and need some sort of stick to make them come into work, they felt was an insult to their professionalism.
You don't need these sticks and carrots as long as you've got the providing what they need. There shouldn't be incentives to have more money. You don't need incentives if you've got a good working atmosphere. You don't need them.
Employees of all kinds are worried that a policy of setting targets for cuts in staff sickness rates will cause bad feeling against the sick and set one group against another.
I don't think it takes into account the differing pressures within the different professions and or jobs involved in running a hospital such as of this size.
Management argues that the link with pay is part of a positive package of occupational health measures, which will benefit staff and increase efficiency. But staff point to the potential threat to patient care. They say that encouraging the unfit to come to work is dangerous.
Patients in hospital are by their very nature immunocompromised. That's why they're here. The last thing they need is to be dealt with by somebody who is also sick themselves.
The unions would prefer to settle the sickness issue at national level, but if it comes to local negotiations, they'll argue that the new policy would be counterproductive, and they'll use every kind of persuasion.
We have to make management see that it will not have the desired effect, that in the long run it will not encourage people to come back to work. What it will do is create an environment where people don't want to be at work at all. It will reduce morale, increase stress, both of which are things which actually increase sickness rates, not decrease them.
I've just finished a consultative ballot of members, and that's across all the different jobs within the health service. And by 10 to 1, they voted for industrial action.
To help union reps and members improve sickness benefits, the TUC has published this guide with LRD. It describes the new sick pay laws and the response of employers, but it also looks at the ingredients of good sick pay schemes. For more information about this and our other stories, you can ring this number. We'll show it again on the notice board at the end of the programme. Despite a gradual recovery in the economy as a whole, finding a permanent job is harder than ever. More and more people are having to take temporary work or a self-employed contract. A new TUC survey on government figures shows that only 1 in 8 new jobs created last year was permanent. Workers in all sectors and all regions are being hit by this trend towards short-term self-employed contracts. In Cornwall, they've long relied on seasonal employment in tourism. But here in Falmouth, we begin with shipbuilding.
At A&P Appledore, many workers have found the switch to casual employment has had an impact well beyond their working lives.
Every time the man is laid off, he has to go through the whole rigmarole again of him applying for benefits for him and his wife and his family. He may be back at work 2 or 3 days, and then he has to go back again, go through the whole rigmarole again and signing on.
Casual staff may do the same job and work just as hard, but they often don't get the same benefits of permanent employees.
They get no sick pay, and they've got no guarantee of employment. They can be brought in one day and laid off the next.
The question of holidays, accrued holidays, even the right to have a holiday. Casual workers are very often told, you have no right to a holiday. When they are required to work on a bank holiday, they're told you don't get the payment rate to pay for it.
Away from the traditional world of shipbuilding, and in the fast-moving modern world of media, the story is the same. Casual contracts are commonplace.
Casual employment is getting to be a very serious problem here, actually. We'd be amazed at the number of people who are casually employed now. I'm referring to contracts of as little as a week, and a month to 3 months is not unusual.
And you're saying that's becoming the norm?
That is becoming the norm gradually, yes.
But employers say they have to adapt to the market, and that may mean firing some permanent staff and rehiring them on short-term contracts.
Companies today are in such a very competitive market that they simply cannot afford to carry staff for whom there is not a full-time job, or they anticipate there not being any longer full-time jobs. So they reduce their numbers to what they are absolutely certain, so far as they can be, will be their permanent level, bottom line level of work.
So what can unions do to smooth out some of the rough edges of casual working?
Well, the sort of thing unions can do is to encourage the employer to offer the same facility to short-term employees as they do to longer-term ones in terms of leave and sick pay, that sort of thing. Also, we can encourage them to look at the problems that they do encounter. I mean, managers do eventually come to realise the problems that it causes, and the more enlightened ones will try to do something about it.
Many employers believe that for firms to succeed, casual workers should not be exploited.
They must be treated fairly if they are going to give their full commitment to the job whilst they're doing it. I do believe that. I think it's very important that they shouldn't feel disadvantaged. Now, if there's something which makes them feel that disadvantaged, then that wants talking out. And here I think perhaps the trade unions have a very important role to play.
Back at A&P Appledore, the unions are facing that challenge, keeping up the pressure for better terms of employment for all casual staff.
The next TUTV programme is on Monday, July the 3rd. Until then, from the West Country and from the largest construction project in Europe being built by unionised labour, goodbye.